You're cruising down the interstate when you pull up behind a spotless, heavy-duty pickup truck that carries a price tag heavier than most suburban mortgages. You know exactly the type of rig I'm referencing here. It's got pristine chrome finishes, custom leather interiors that cost more than a year of renting an apartment, and a monthly financing bill that would give a seasoned accountant a panic attack. But the truly fascinating part of this scenario is the person behind the wheel. The driver of that rolling luxury suite is very likely pulling in a smaller annual salary than you are. So, what exactly is happening behind the scenes? How are ordinary consumers somehow managing to float these astronomical vehicle expenses that completely shatter conventional financial logic? It's a modern economic mystery, and observing how your coworker can justify an $80,000 vehicle while stressing over the price of a gallon of milk requires a deep dive into consumer psychology. Before we unravel the specific mathematical gymnastics these buyers are using, we need to establish a clear picture of the current automotive landscape. The baseline cost for financing a fresh vehicle in today's economy has completely blown past thresholds that would have been labeled as pure financial fiction just 10 years ago. We are routinely looking at monthly obligations that easily rival or surpass what millions of individuals shell out for their housing. Yet, despite these staggering figures, an endless parade of consumers happily signs away their future income every single afternoon. They drive off the dealership lot in machines that carry a sticker price higher than the median household takes home in an entire year. And the most crucial detail here is that these buyers aren't secret trust fund beneficiaries or tech startup executives hiding their fortunes. They are your local teachers, retail managers, shift workers, and medical assistants. They are everyday working professionals who have somehow hacked the numbers, or at least they have convinced themselves that the math checks out perfectly. The harsh reality is that an entire invisible infrastructure exists solely to make these mathematically absurd payment plans feel entirely normal and manageable. Pulling back the curtain on this machinery isn't just about satisfying a passing curiosity regarding your neighbor's spending habits. It is fundamentally about shielding your own wealth and avoiding a signature on a financing contract that could financially paralyze your household for the next 7 to 10 years of your life. So, we have to address the elephant in the room and look at the actual numbers flying across the finance manager's desk. When we break down the true cost of these monthly vehicle obligations, people often assume the data is exaggerated for dramatic effect. Right now, the baseline for an average new car payment has shattered the $780 psychological barrier. And keep in mind, that figure isn't buying you a high-end European import or a weekend sports car. That is simply the median baseline for a completely standard commuter vehicle purchased by an average consumer trying to get to work. The situation takes an even darker turn when you shift your focus to the heavy-duty trucks and oversized SUVs that dominate modern roadways. These models have rapidly become the default transportation choice for families, and their financing agreements reflect that intense demand. It has become incredibly routine to see monthly truck obligations cruising past the $1,000 mark. In fact, checking the upper end of the spectrum, seeing signatures on $1,300 monthly agreements is no longer a shock to dealership staff. Imagine draining $1,300 from your bank account every single month for up to 8 straight years. By the time that final payment clears, we are looking at total out-of-pocket costs nearing $95,000 for a depreciating asset, and that massive sum totally ignores the mandatory insurance, routine maintenance, and crippling fuel costs. You could easily hypothesize that perhaps wages have surged enough to safely absorb these massive blows to the monthly budget. Sadly, while household earnings have seen incremental bumps, they haven't come anywhere close to matching the explosive growth of automotive debt. The math simply does not support the lifestyle. So, how exactly is the average person pulling this off? It all starts with the stretch. Think back to a time when financing a vehicle meant a 3-year commitment. Pushing it to 4 years was considered slightly risky. Well, those days are completely gone. Right now, auto lenders are regularly drawing up contracts that lock you in for 7-8, or sometimes a mind-boggling 10 years. The psychological trap here is brilliantly simple. Let's say you're staring at an $80,000 premium truck. If you tried to pay that off in 4 years, you'd be hit with a brutal monthly bill of around $1,900. But if the dealer stretches that exact same loan across 8 years, suddenly your monthly obligation drops to a much friendlier $1,100. To the buyer sitting in the showroom, that $1,100 feels like a massive victory. They are entirely focused on whether they can squeeze that single number into their monthly budget, completely ignoring the massive financial crater they are digging for themselves. What the dealership intentionally distracts you from is the devastating long-term math of that extended timeline. By taking that 8-year route, you aren't just making your life easier month to month. You are explosively inflating the final price tag of that truck. That affordable $1,100 payment over nearly a decade adds up to over $105,600. If you had stuck to the 4-year plan, your total cost would have been exactly $91,200. You are literally burning an extra $14,400 in interest just for the illusion of affordability. And the nightmare doesn't stop there. Vehicles are notoriously terrible at holding their value. They drop like a rock the second you drive off the asphalt. By year 5 of your incredibly long 8-year loan, that truck is worth a mere fraction of its original sticker price. But your loan balance is still massive. You are officially drowning in negative equity. You literally cannot sell or trade the car without having to pay thousands of dollars out of your own pocket just to clear the debt. Beyond the stretched out terms, we have to talk about the magical allure of 0% financing. You see the massive banners at every local lot promising free money to qualified buyers. Here is the reality check. That money is never free. The cost of borrowing is simply baked directly into the inflated purchase price of the vehicle. You either get a serious cash discount and pay standard interest, or you pay top dollar to get that shiny 0% rate. You do not get both. Plus, the people who actually qualify for those elite promotions are usually the ones with enough cash to buy the car outright anyway. For everyone else, they get hit with aggressive interest rates. And this leads right into the notorious trade-in trap. A buyer gets 4 years into their massive loan, gets bored of the vehicle, but they still owe way more than the car is currently worth. So the dealer smiles, takes the old car, and just rolls that leftover debt right into a brand new loan for an even more expensive vehicle. It is a brilliant strategy for the dealerships because it turns you into a lifelong hostage. You are stuck in a never-ending cycle, constantly paying off cars you don't even own anymore while adding fresh debt on top. It is a financial treadmill that keeps speeding up, but perhaps the wildest part of this entire situation is how socially acceptable it has become. If a friend told you they were dropping $1,300 every single month on designer sneakers, you would probably sit them down for a serious intervention regarding their spending addiction. Yet, when someone signs away that exact same amount for a daily commuter vehicle, we just smile, nod, and congratulate them on securing reliable transportation. This didn't just happen by chance. It is the direct result of decades of brilliant marketing that successfully tied our personal self-worth to the metal box sitting in our driveway. They want you to believe that your vehicle is a direct reflection of your success, your work ethic, and your identity. When you look at the day-to-day reality of absorbing an $800 to $1,300 monthly hit, the practical mechanics get genuinely alarming. People are essentially building their entire existence around their vehicle. They treat that auto loan as if it were their primary housing cost. I've witnessed folks actively downsizing their living arrangements or staying packed in tight with roommates just to keep their luxury SUV parked out front. They survive on cheap instant meals while cruising around in a machine that rivals the cost of a small starter home. We're talking about completely sacrificing vacations and dining out, surrendering a massive 30% of their net pay. And the ultimate irony? Many are forced to pick up side hustles, using that exact same expensive vehicle to deliver takeout or drive passengers all weekend, just to generate enough cash to avoid repossession. You literally become an indentured servant to your own car. It gets even more dangerous when folks start raiding their future to fund their morning commute. We see people cashing out chunks of their retirement accounts or borrowing heavily against their 401k plans just to handle a down payment or a sudden repair bill. They are trading hundreds of thousands of dollars in future compounding wealth for a piece of metal that will be basically worthless in a decade. Then you have the credit card gymnastics. Drivers are throwing their gas, repairs, and insurance bills onto high-interest plastic just to ensure they have enough actual cash left to cover the car note. And shockingly, some are even tapping into their home equity to finance these depreciating liabilities. Using an asset that builds wealth to fund an asset that bleeds cash is entirely backwards. By the way, before we get into the absolute chaos of managing multiple vehicles, Let me know in the comments below, what is the absolute maximum percentage of your income you would ever spend on a car? Drop your answer down there, and while you're at it, hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the breakdown. Now, brace yourself, because these extreme financial compromises aren't just happening for a single vehicle. A massive chunk of the population is multiplying this disaster across their entire household. We have reached a point where the average American driveway holds more vehicles than licensed drivers, which is an absolute mathematical nightmare. You will frequently see families juggling 2, 3, or even 4 active auto loans at the exact same time. The parents each have their premium commuters, and maybe there's a pricey weekender, or a fresh sedan for the teenager. When you combine those obligations, they easily eclipse what a normal family spends on housing. They have essentially transformed their household into a private leasing company, but instead of generating profit, they are bleeding capital from every direction. It's a full-time mental job managing all those depreciating assets, loan terms, and due dates, yet they celebrate keeping their heads above water instead of questioning why they jumped into the ocean in the first place. And then we crash into the hidden expenses that completely blindside buyers, starting with the reality of insurance. Protecting a massive $70,000 heavy-duty SUV demands a totally different premium structure than covering a standard $30,000 commuter car. Once you stack up the required comprehensive plans, collision policies, and that crucial gap coverage, your monthly premium can effortlessly shoot past the $250 mark. For households running that multi-car circus we just talked about, insurance alone can drain $550 from their checking account every 30 days. That is over $6,600 a year evaporating into thin air, strictly for the legal right to drive these depreciating money pits on public streets. Buyers get so hypnotized by haggling over the monthly loan figure at the dealership desk that they completely ignore the massive insurance reality until their agent hands them a staggering bill. Then there is the unavoidable reality of mechanical upkeep, which constantly catches these buyers entirely off guard. Today's massive SUVs and heavy-duty pickups are essentially rolling supercomputers packed with hyper-complex sensors and premium parts. When something inevitably fails, the repair quotes are absolutely staggering. A routine brake replacement can easily wipe out $850, while swapping a bad transmission will demand upwards of $5,500. And heaven forbid you suffer catastrophic engine failure because you're staring down a $10,500 mechanics bill. The vast majority of consumers carrying these massive auto loans have zero emergency savings dedicated to maintenance. When the check engine light flashes, that expense goes straight onto a high-interest credit card, launching a debt spiral that is incredibly difficult to escape. You end up with these pristine $80,000 status symbols parked immaculately in driveways because the owners are frantically checking the couch cushions just to afford a tank of gas. It's the equivalent of wearing a luxury timepiece while eating instant noodles for dinner every night. And speaking of gas, the simple act of keeping these mechanical beasts fueled up has evolved into a second car payment all on its own. Just a decade ago, you could finance a whole vehicle for what people now spend just at the pump. When you are piloting a hulking truck that gets perhaps 14 miles to the gallon during heavy city traffic, and pump prices refuse to settle down, the math gets ugly fast. A standard suburban commute can effortlessly torch through $400 a month in fuel expenses alone. Factor in a couple of weekend getaways or hauling a boat, and that monthly fuel budget easily spikes even higher. But this is where the financial anatomy of these decisions gets truly terrifying. Let's outline a highly realistic scenario using the numbers we see every day, because the total out-of-pocket cost is something most buyers flat out refuse to calculate. Imagine someone signs for a $65,000 premium truck using a 7-year term at a 7.5% interest rate. They lock in a monthly payment of roughly $990, which they somehow convince themselves is a great deal because it isn't $1,400. Over the entire 84-month lifespan of that loan, they will physically hand over $83,160 to the bank. Now, let's stack on the hidden lifestyle fees. Over those same 7 years, insurance premiums will drain another $21,000. Keeping the tank full will vaporize $33,600. And we will conservatively estimate routine maintenance and the occasional mechanical failure at $12,240. When you tally up that entire disaster, this individual will have funneled $150,000 into their driveway. And at the end of that brutal 7-year journey, that truck will maybe command a resale value of $22,000. They have essentially sacrificed $150,000 for the temporary privilege of navigating a $22,000 piece of steel. It is literal wealth evaporation equipped with heated leather steering wheels. The absolute heaviest blow in all of this is calculating what that identical pile of cash could have achieved if directed toward actual asset creation. What if that driver had resisted the showroom temptation? If they had taken that same $990 every single month and aggressively pushed it into a standard index fund, yielding an average 8% return, their reality would look radically different. After those exact same 7 years, they wouldn't be staring at a rusting, depreciated liability. They would be sitting on a compounding investment portfolio worth over $110,000. By choosing the shiny hood ornament, they didn't just invite crippling monthly stress into their household. They actively sabotaged their own path to financial independence. They traded long-term wealth building for immediate depreciating gratification. The real danger, though, is the mental prison that locks people into this loop. Once a buyer signs away their future for that massive monthly bill, they experience a bizarre kind of financial hostage situation. They fall deeply in love with the very thing draining their bank account. That heavy-duty pickup suddenly transforms from a simple way to get around into a shiny monument to their personal success and grit. The mere thought of trading it in for a more sensible, budget-friendly ride is viewed as a direct hit to their ego. It feels like waving a white flag and telling the neighborhood they aren't doing well. Because of this intense emotional bond, logical money management goes completely out the window. If you try to explain how a dependable older sedan could keep hundreds of dollars in their pocket every month, they don't see it as helpful advice. They take it as a personal insult against their hard work. In fact, they will fiercely protect that absurd auto loan with the same energy they would use to defend a close relative, completely ignoring that the vehicle is actively sabotaging their family's long-term security. And you better believe the major car manufacturers understand this psychological vulnerability perfectly. They pour astronomical amounts of capital into studying exactly how to push those emotional buttons and turn your feelings into a legally binding contract. When you step onto a dealership floor, pay close attention to what the sales team actually talks about. You will never hear them bring up the long-term opportunity cost or the brutal reality of compound interest. Their entire pitch is laser-focused on instant gratification, social prestige, and hitting a monthly number that you can technically survive. The entire showroom experience is engineered to bypass your logical brain. Every single rational fear you might have is met with a pre-packaged countermeasure. You think the monthly bill is too steep? No problem. They will just stretch the timeline to a decade. Anxious about parts breaking down? They will happily roll a marked up extended warranty right into your financing. Terrified that the car will lose half its value in 3 years? They will smoothly suggest that you'll just trade it in for a fresh model before that even matters. So, the great secret behind how everyday people are carrying these monumental vehicle debts is that there really is no secret. It is just a highly coordinated illusion built on stretching timelines, exploiting human emotion, and performing accounting tricks that defy reality. Nobody is genuinely affording these luxury transport machines in any true financial sense. They are simply pushing a massive boulder of debt up a hill, convincing themselves that holding the keys to a pristine truck is worth the crushing weight. The next time you find yourself at a stoplight, gazing at a shiny new rig that costs more than a decent plot of land, just keep in mind that the person gripping the wheel is likely rationing their groceries to keep it from getting repossessed. And suddenly, that fully paid off, slightly dented commuter car sitting quietly in your driveway starts to look like the ultimate flex. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments what is the absolute maximum percentage of your income you would ever spend on a car. See you in the next video. And remember, stay smart with your money. Take care.